Hello, guys. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Tyler, and you're listening to our very first podcast, The 105. So I'm joined here today by two of my friends at university.
Hi, I'm Rowan.
Hi, I'm Patrick.
And today we're going to be talking about why is true crime so popular? And the latter question, is the popularity it gets ethical? So we're going to be speaking about the rise of true crime and the true crime genre. Now, Patrick and Rowan here and myself have been doing notes on this called Cornell Notes, which is what we do at university. So all of these are going to play a part in us answering this question. So we'll go into what we've learned and what they've told us basically through these books. So I'm going to start with Rowan, and you spoke about the rise of true crime in one of your Cornell notes. So if you could just speak to us a little bit and give us an insight on what you learned.
Yeah, so I researched a book called A Film That Will Rock You to the Core, Emotion and Effect in Dee Zachary and Real Crime Documentary. It goes into how technology and real-life events have changed and improved the creation of documentary over time, and what modes stayed and made them as big as they are. Specifically going into details as 9/11 and the changes in documentaries and how many were made, obviously because it's a mass event that affected the entire world. So many documentaries made, so many new improvements to try.
Yeah.
And it also talks about directors as well, talking about that they decide for you your opinion.
So this is like points we'll get into later. So it's deciding your opinion. So you're saying basically this person who wrote this article, this book, is pointing out the fact that as technology's grown, the crime genre has grown with it, basically. So this is like why it's become popular, because there's so many different ways, there's so many different platforms.
Yeah, there's the way we consume it is a lot different to years before. We have loads more platforms.
So this is about the rise. So I can talk about what I've looked at actually. So in my first Cornell note, I did about a podcast, because when we discovered we was going to do a podcast in an alternative to a essay, we were speaking about the alternatives, obviously, like I just said. But the Serial podcast, which if anyone's listened to has heard about, this was something that popped up when I was researching, and this was a really popular podcast. So there's a few quotes that I actually picked up from this article. It says here, in 2006, only 22% of Americans even knew what a podcast was. By 2018, it was up to 64%. So that gives context to how podcasts have evolved. And obviously the most popular podcasts are all crime. I say all, a lot of them are, or can be focused on that. And that was what this was about. So in late 2014, the podcast Serial, which explored the investigation of a 1999 murder of Hai Min Lee and the subsequent trial and conviction of Adnan Syed, sorry if I've butchered the name, well, I'm not sorry, you're a criminal, became the fastest podcast at the time to reach 5 million downloads. So that's about podcasts, but obviously there's so much more. There's TV programs, even dramas now. We've seen Dharma, absolutely bonkers, and all these different documentary styles that you see on specifically like Netflix and stuff now. So that we're talking about obviously the rise of it. And that, for me, was one of the key things. Is there anything else you could point out in what you've learned?
Yeah, I had a quote that I found in my book as well. It says, Dee Zachary attempts to entice viewers by referring to a mystery at the heart of a story. And I think nowadays when you watch a documentary, a lot more is left to the imagination towards the start. It's edited in such a way where you're like, I want to know what happens next, blah, blah, blah. Which wouldn't have happened originally in old documentaries, because people just want to get straight to the point. Don't want to know why it's happened, who did it.
So you're tying down from what you've learned, the rise ties into the improvement in which we make these documentaries.
Yeah, I think the genre is so popular now. I think it's mainly the rise of it's mainly due to how we edit it now, how we present it. It's shown a lot better. It's more like people watch it like a movie now.
Yeah.
Compared to just watching a documentary. It's in a league of its own.
Absolutely have to agree with you on that one. And before I go on to chapter 2, Patrick, was there anything you wanted to talk about in that genre? Or?
I've researched this article. It's called Making a Genre, the Case of Contemporary True Crime Documentary. Another reason why the true crime documentary has risen so much is due to narrative. And through that, I found out that, like I said, narrative is an important part of true crime documentaries. And this is because it basically allows the audience to understand like how and why the crime was committed. So the article notes that documentary storytelling relies on narrative to generate empathy for its subjects, whether they are victims or perpetrators or both. And true crime storytelling is no exception. So this emotional connection with the audience is what makes true crime documentaries so powerful. So in this article, I also found out that the criminal justice system plays a significant role in shaping the narratives and like the overall aesthetic of true crime documentaries. So the article states, true crime documentaries are also deeply implicated in the criminal justice system that they depict, and the representation of that system is therefore subject to ethical considerations. And the article also notes that the observational style of documentary is often used in true crime documentaries, which basically can like create a sense of intimacy with the audience. So, yeah.
Sounds really interesting, Patrick. You've made some good points there, to be fair. Was there anything else you looked at? Because obviously you looked at other books. Anything else?
I've researched this book, Stylistic Choices in True Crime Documentaries, and it ties back to what Rowan said about the cameras and sound equipment. I've got this quote from the book. It says, as camera and sound equipment become more lightweight, filmmakers could be far from involved in a subject's life. It is not uncommon for moments to be recorded that the subject might not wish to be made widely public. And usually the issue is solved with consent forms. So first, what I want to talk about is the cameras and equipment. Back in the day, you didn't have any of this technology that you have today. So my question is that good or bad that we have this new technology when it comes to true crimes?
I think you're leading us in perfectly to chapter 2 about the ethicality, of which I believe it is.
Right.
Check. Yeah.
Yep.
And also you made a fair point about the cameras and the technology, which is something that I was, if it was me asked the question, I'd definitely answer in that way, because of course it's going to be more popular when everybody can capture it, you know. Back like 100 years ago, you ain't going to have everybody around with phone cameras, and you aren't going to have everybody around with TV crews and stuff. So there's easy ways to get this footage now. And whenever a mass shooting unfortunately happens in America, say for example, there's going to be camera crew there, whether you want them to be or not. So you make a fair point, 100%. And then chapter 2, the ethicality. So you were speaking on, and just rephrase again what you're speaking about, because you mentioned something that I've completely let blank my head about the ethicality of it. About the consent forms, basically, that's it.
Oh, consent forms, yeah. So, yeah, the documentary makers need to, be careful what they show, because they could potentially offend victims' families. I think the consent forms are really important, because without the consent, it's not ethical, basically.
Yeah, like, they need the approval of who's affected most by this.
Yes.
Rowan, anything you want to say? Doesn't specifically have to be about consent forms or anything, just anything else you've learned.
Well, I had a book that I researched that went into the ethical side of it, but mainly focused on the good side, that it was ethical.
So this was arguing that it's a good thing that we have all this genre. All right, okay.
It is. It's called Crime Victims as Subjects of Documentary Exploitation or Advocacy. I have a quote here that says, in a legal system that has little awareness of and even less curiosity about the backstory of people who seek its assistance, film offers a valuable bridge between what the justice system can provide to the parties and what the parties need to fully address their grievances.
So, I semi-get that. You're talking like the victims here are made more aware. I mean, people are made more aware of these victims when they're on the big screen.
Yeah, basically, victims are given a story, a life. They're human again, and it also goes into that the documentary can provide something that maybe the legal system can't, because some legal systems,
like reopening a case, or
like maybe if you've closed the case because you don't know who did it, but type of thing, or like
brings the interest back into it.
Maybe someone was given a short sentence and then maybe they should have been given, because some countries have flawed legal systems. America maybe the most prominent. So
I get you.
Yeah.
I mean, and now I'm going to come right back at you with a counter argument. So the counter argument is that it does the complete opposite, and it makes serial killers and criminals famous. Now, this 2005 book that I read called Natural Born Celebrities, Serial Killers in American Culture was written by University of Chicago. And this was really interesting, this one. Genuinely, I'm not much of a reader, but when I was reading into this, it did make some fair points. Speaking about, you get fandoms of serial killers and like all these people. And obviously without media, that ain't gonna happen, is it? So this went into about memorabilia, and now you can say that's like really niche and for really strange people. Do you know, like maybe if they've got someone's hair, or they have a shirt that a killer wore, or something like that. But then I'm thinking memorabilia is more than just that. Could be anybody who watches a crime show and buys a shirt about it. That technically is memorabilia, making money off something. And I don't know if that's a common thing, but it should be thought about when it comes to it being ethical or not. Like, and here, like, it is speaking about memorabilia for the most part, but it's saying the quote here, which was really interesting, I found brought to light the topic. The existence of celebrity serial killers tells us about the roles fame and violence play in contemporary American culture. So obviously we're not Americans, we're English, but it's the same here also in the English-speaking world. These people are famous, aren't they?
Yeah.
It speaks a lot to our, not ours specifically, but maybe. I mean, I like true crime, so people's genuine morbid curiosity is leading to horrible people becoming really famous, and that's my point, and that's the point that he's trying to say.
Well, I have another quote that again backs up my side of my research. It says, when filmmakers turn their cameras towards the justice system and its troubled participants, the potentials of benefits are significant. So again, it reiterates what I was saying before, that the more that filmmakers in an outside perspective get involved, and the more popularity and viewers that brings, the more justice the family is given. So I agree with what you were saying, but I think it can go both ways.
Can definitely, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, this is dependent on what the documentary is, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I'll chip into that. I was going to talk about psychological effects on people and on the audience. I would say, coming back to the ethical point, I would say it's not ethical, like, because true crime affects people mentally. For example, just give me 1 second, I'm just going to find it.
While you're looking for that, I'm going to butt in because you've made something resonate in my head. I'm thinking, imagine being a victim of a serial killer and you have to see this guy's face on repeat, or woman if it's a woman killer. Imagine having to see the person over and over for years and years because they're on that big screen and people know them and they're famous. But your child or brother, sister, dad, mother is forgotten. That's maybe where the ethical problems come in, I think. And that comes to both sides. You've made the point that it sheds more light on these victims.
So you're saying murderers, they give it more screen time than victims?
100%. You ain't going to watch a documentary based on victims. And that's maybe something that people would not like to admit, but it's the truth, innit?
Yeah, I would go back on what you said before, though. It depends on the documentary.
It definitely does. Patrick, I'll let you say what you was going to say because we've sort of quit.
Yeah, so like as Rowan said, it depends on the documentary, doesn't it?
Definitely.
So like, through the book, I'm going back to the same book, The Rise of True Crime, the 20th Century Murder and American Popular Culture. I've got a quote that says, with film, the consumption of enjoyment of true crime narratives becomes a multi-sensory experience, one with the potential of immediate social effects. So, for example, fear of showers, viewing, for example, Psycho.
Say,
Yeah.
Never seen the film, but I don't think you need to know that.
Oh, yeah. Or quoting lines and mimicking the qualities of voice or gestures of certain iconic characters, which, so this quote talks about psychological effects that the audience get by watching true crime documentaries. So, you with me, yeah.
I think it's saying as well, sorry to cut you off, it was saying as well that it's sort of pushing it into pop culture. You know, Psycho was influenced by Ed Gein. Don't know if you know who that is, but that's something that actually popped up in one of my other Cornell notes, was that I read about it because it came up as Psycho, came up in mine as well. Let me try and find it. If anyone wants to say anything while I'm looking for it.
I'm just going to finish what I was saying, yeah, like,
Sorry, man.
no, it's fine. I was just going to say, like, yeah, I don't think it's ethical. I think it's true crime. A lot of true crime documentaries in today's society are really hard, like, hitting an audience. It's too much for the audience to.
So we still watch it.
Yeah, we still watch it.
Yeah, we still watch it anyways.
But
I think the only reason why people watch it is because it's like that. I don't know. I think people are just curious.
yeah.
And then I found it now. So it's called Obsession. This was the next Cornell note, actually. I could have just turned the page and found it instantly. Obsession with Serial Killers Love to Hate. And this one, it was saying like around about the turn of the 60s and 70s was when it started to become really popular. And that I'm tying back in against like chapter 1, like the rise of it, yeah. but we might as well. We can talk about anything the whole way through as long as it ties back to the main question: why is it popular and is it ethical? So we're talking about popularity again. And you know, like with the rise of modern cinema, saying like the '60s and Hitchcock and stuff like that, and he really changed the horror genre, didn't he? He brought it to a core. I'm not an expert, but for me, what it was saying, it opened people's eyes to it, and it sort of got it in there into the pop culture, because people like, it says here, people like Ed Gein had only just been discovered, like this was like a new thing where his face is plastered in the news in America, and people sat there like, oh my word, what a weirdo. Took inspiration from this absolute creep and made a film out of it, and a very, very successful film. Let me just read this a little bit and see what I've wrote down on here. Perhaps it's no coincidence that the nation with the most elaborate mass media has also produced the most serial killers of any nation in the world. I don't think that's saying it's produced the most. I think that's saying, like, everybody knows them ones because it's the country that has the most media.
So you're saying America influenced the true crime genre the most?
I think it definitely did. It definitely did. I mean, you could talk about London, Whitechapel, you know, Jack the Ripper, stuff like Penny Dreadful, stuff like that. But let's face it, we all know these killers, don't we? We all know Jeffrey Dahmer, we all know Ted Bundy,
And
etc.
on your previous points, were you also saying that killers become so notorious that they influence the film genre too?
They do.
So you're saying that's how they're so popular, because they just resonate for so long in different genres?
They do. I think so. I mean, let's, for example, think of the Netflix show You, which is really successful, and I really liked it. I don't know if there's any direct comparison to Ted Bundy, but I'm sorry. Put the two of them next to each other and you can just sort of see it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's based on real life killers, because if it wasn't, then it wouldn't be accurate to real life, would it? And it'd be sort of like, this guy's not really realistic, he's just sort of over the top weird. Or you have to make it believable, don't you?
Yeah. Well, when I was researching, I came across the word that you give to killers. It's infamous. It basically means being famous for something bad.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Which is most commonly like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, the ones like you've already mentioned.
Infamy, yeah, infamy is the word, indeed. And I have actually come up with a few questions on this, to be fair, and I'll ask you both this. Would a change in the way news is presented help in stopping even evil individuals becoming such infamous celebrities? And there's the word infamous again. Like, if we change the way we present these killers in the news, is it going to change the way everyone at home sees them, everybody else sees them?
No. I think at the end of the day, if you kill someone, you're still a killer. It doesn't matter how you show up, even with bad upbringings. Because I remember in the...
No, but what I'm saying is, like, people at home, if they're not on the news consistently and not talked about, then people aren't going to go out of the way to find them.
That you could say so, but at the same time, that could make people want to make research about them more.
Yeah, the documentary view would be more prominent because people...
He's telling me people are going to go down rabbit holes.
Yeah, because if there's a serial killer and there's not news about it, there's going to be documentaries made about the person, because there's a lot of people getting killed. You know, people want to know who did it.
So you're saying it's going to happen anyway?
I think true crime would find a way.
It would, yeah. But the question is, if they didn't,
would it affect the way we perceive killers? Them specific killers? Is that what you mean?
Just a question for Don, bro.
Yeah, I don't get the question.
I think it's very vague, the question. I think I answered it.
Well, just saying they're not going to be as famous, and they're not, are they?
It would be yes, but like I said, true crime would find a way.
Oh yeah, I think my example is what I'm saying. Say school shooters,
Yeah.
example, like Columbine, all these killers that come afterwards, you'll always find a link to Columbine, and that was because these two killers that did Columbine were so famous.
Yeah.
That's what I think. And
So you're saying if Columbine wasn't shown, there would be less school shootings?
I think so.
Is that your point? No, I don't.
That's not my point.
I do disagree, because I think it's all down to circumstance.
I think people are inspired by certain individuals.
I do see your point. Yes, I do see your point. I'd say I'm 50-50 about that.
Yeah, I'd say about it's a small percentage of people influenced by others. I think it's more down to what they went through themselves
Yeah.
to commit the crime.
I get you. That's why it's the question. But then the other question is, would it be a stretch to say some killers commit actions because they know the attention they're likely to get for committing them?
Yes, in some cases, yeah, people crave attention, and if that's the way they can get it, then obviously, yeah.
So then you do agree with my first one?
I do and I don't.
You do and you don't.
Yeah.
You do and you don't.
We do and we don't.
We're everywhere. We spent ages on that one.
Yeah.
I'll skip over to whatever else we've got written down. Let's just say, why do you think true crime is so popular in general? I mean, we've spoken about so many different things.
I will go back to my first point. I think it's popular because of today's society. I think back in the day it wasn't that popular. We didn't have the same technology. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have sound. A lot of things you can get away with in today's society as well. As long as you got consent, it's fine.
I think I could elaborate on Patrick. I think the same. It starts technology. The way we edit, the way we shoot, the more cameras we have, the further we can shoot things. Documentaries and true crime documentaries are way more entertaining now. I also in my researched reenactments. I think that giving it its movie element makes them a lot more watchable and more enticing to further bigger audiences.
Just so much more entertaining than, if you was picturing an 80s crime documentary. No diss to 80s crime documentaries, but the ones nowadays are a lot more movie-fied and they're a lot more entertaining, I think.
Yeah.
Another one. We're going back on the popularity thing, and I'll put my Cornell notes back into the mix again. And the last one that I did pointed out was the 2020 lockdown. It was a real moment of significance to true crime. We're locked inside, right? And this is backed up by this book, True Crime and Danger Narratives, 2021. You're locked inside 24/7. You're only allowed to go out for one jog, whatever a day, whatever. Which I don't think I certainly didn't. I watched TV 24/7, and what was on Netflix most of the time in 2020, more true crime documentaries kept popping up left, right, and centre, and people were indoors, had no choice other than to stick what was on telly. And that's what this says anyway. And I agree with it, to be honest.
I think we could also go into true crime documentaries give you a sense of something that you wouldn't normally see. People are intrigued to see things that aren't normal.
Shock value.
Yeah.
Shock value in it. Definitely. I mean, if we're done talking on the popularities, then because I think we've all made it clear what we think the popularity comes from, and we're all right in, can't say you're right or wrong in a case like this. It's opinion, but in my opinion, I think we've all made good facts. Is there anything else?
I think we laid down.
We laid down our ideas for this first podcast pretty well, I presume. To give it a listen back, and everyone who listens will have to give us their opinion. But yeah,
thanks for listening, I guess.
Thanks for listening, guys. It's been the 105. Hopefully, maybe if this goes down well, we might be able to do some more in the future. But for now, we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.